I learned the rhythm of our office before I ever fully understood its politics. We were a mid-sized digital agency that called itself Brightline Media, and in the world of SEO and paid search, rhythm meant client calls at 9, a quick scrum at 10, and the churn of deliverables that kept the revenue line breathing. I'd come in early for months because I liked the quiet morning hours, the hum of computers before the day's noise, the way dashboards updated and told their honest, numerical stories. I believed those numbers. I believed that if I built wins consistently, if I documented decisions and outcomes, recognition would follow. That belief cost me more than I realized until it didn't. At first, it was small things: Emily's hand in the air before mine in meetings, her recap emails that echoed the exact language I'd used in private messages, the way she smiled when the director complimented some team initiative in which I'd been the one solving the technical crawl issues and rewriting the meta titles. I didn't accuse her. I had too much to lose. I told myself to be patient, to keep doing the work. Results, after all, were supposed to be objective: rankings, traffic, conversion lift. Numbers didn't lie. I began logging more than the usual. Every email I sent about a keyword pivot, every Trello card I updated with content deadlines, every Slack message that contained a proposed change was saved, timestamped, and copied into a private folder I labeled simply, Evidence. I set daily exports of Google Search Console and GA4 reports, saved the version history of every Google Doc, and took screenshots of the ref snapshots before and after a major link building push. I started annotating those screenshots with short notes: which PR outreach I ran, which journalist replied, where the link went live, and how the domain rating changed the following week. It felt excessive, borderline paranoid, but it was the only way I could see to push back against something I couldn't yet prove publicly. Emily, meanwhile, moved through the office with the same effortless social skill she always had. She had a laugh that disarmed criticism and a way of making casual praise sound like the natural response to genius. Clients liked her. Managers liked her. David, our director, had a fondness for clear, simple narratives. He favored the person who could deliver a story about a campaign in a clean slide deck and a friendly voice. I favored messy work, analyzing log files, resolving canonicalization issues, improving schema markup. Those things didn't photograph well on slides, but they pushed results. I didn't want to be petty. I wanted to be right. So I kept building my file. Every time a client congratulated the team, I saved the email and replied with the line item work I'd completed, CCING the proper account managers, and adding links to the commits in our content repo. The response was polite, but often it didn't do much. Managers sometimes thanked me privately. And then the meeting minutes forgot my name. The angle where it became nefarious was when she started forwarding my emails as if they were hers. Not subtle paraphrasing, literal copy-paste. A paragraph from my keyword analysis would end up in a client-facing memo she sent under her name. A content outline I had spent hours detailing showed up in a pitch she presented at a client quarterly, introduced by her with a confident, "We're seeing great results here." The client smiled, pleased, and David nodded approvingly. I felt colder each time I watched it happen. At home, I sat with my laptop and compiled timelines. The best evidence is always chronological, actions in time that you can point to and say, "This happened then because of this." I cross-referenced Slack timestamps with Google Drive version history and even pulled the file upload logs from our CMS provider. I exported emails with header information and saved them as PDFs. If anyone ever disputed the time something was sent, the raw headers would show it. I printed a few of the key documents and taped them in order to the wall beside my desk at home. The wall looked like an investigator's board, strings of yellow post-its connecting the pieces. It made me feel like a private detective of my own career. People say the best revenge is success. I think the best revenge is unassailable proof. I doubled down on the work. I picked 2 of our most underperforming clients and treated them like my personal experiments. I rebuilt the site architecture for one, correcting indexation errors and implementing a server-side rendering fix that cut the page load time and significantly reduced CLS. For the second, I crafted a content cluster strategy after keyword gap analysis showed 3 low-competition topics that could feed a funnel. I wrote the initial briefs, lined up the writers, edited, optimized, and established a measurable baseline to show week-over-week gains. The first client's organic sessions rose by double digits in 2 months. The second's lead form submissions increased by a measurable percentage tied directly to the new content funnel. I saved every monthly report, every graph, and every client reply that said, "This is exactly what we needed." Emily saw my wins and smiled as if she'd played a part in them. She congratulated me privately with flowery language in Slack, the kind of cloying congratulations that had a tang of performance. She opened her calendar to work on strategy at times that were convenient for PR-facing conversations and took photos in front of whiteboards with markers in hand. Those photos made their way into the company newsletter where she got a top performer highlight. I read the digital brief that accompanied her picture and felt my jaw tighten. The newsletter quoted phrases I'd used in a strategy doc weeks earlier. I didn't break. I became more methodical. For meetings, I started arriving armed with printed one-pagers. There is something bluntly effective about placing a crisp one-pager on the table in a conference room. It demands attention. I made sure my one-pagers noted the dates of initial strategies, the timestamps of shared documents, and the sequence of changes. I used screenshots with visible timestamps. At the next client call, when Emily tried to claim a pivot that had been my idea, I slid my one-pager across the table and said, "Let's review the timeline," and then walked the client through the chain of events. The client's eyebrows rose, they appreciated clarity and accountability. But inside the office, the tide was still slow to shift. Old narratives die harder than new facts arrive. The breaking point came in a way I hadn't fully expected. Our largest account, a national retail client, asked for a mid-year strategy refresh. Emily volunteered to lead the presentation. She was always eager for visible client-facing moments. They called it leadership, I called it stagecraft. I prepared as if I would be presenting. I spent nights assembling a granular technical audit and a prioritized roadmap, fix server response times, update product schema for richer snippets, execute a geo-targeted content push, and a focused backlink campaign tied to local PR. Each item had a task owner, milestones, and measurable KPIs tied to revenue impact. I slid the document into the shared drive and pinged Emily in Slack with a short note, added technical audit and suggested roadmap, feel free to copy relevant slides for the pitch. She responded with an emoji. It was the kind of passive, invisible consent that would later be used as her proof of teamwork. On the day of the pitch, our conference room was full. The client's senior marketing director was there, and David had cleared his morning for the presentation. Emily walked in with a polished deck, interspersed with glossy images and high-level bullish statements. She spoke well, she owned the room. I could see the client respond to the narrative. Then she shifted to the roadmap slide, the one I had filled with practical, technical steps. She spoke confidently about our proposed phased approach and quoted my milestone dates almost verbatim. A part of me felt proud, the work was finally visible. But then, as the questions from the client deepened, she had little of the technical specificity needed to answer and began to pivot back to marketing speak. It was a fragile moment, and I felt the urge to jump in to clarify, to defend the work. But David had given her the floor. He seemed to prefer her story over the gritty operational details I could have supplied. After the meeting, the client liked what they saw. They asked for a revised fee proposal and a rapid start date, but under the heroics of presentation, she had claimed the lead, and the leadership wrote it into the account plan as her initiative. That night, I don't know whether pride or fury kept me awake. I understood that what I had collected, timestamps and email headers and version histories, would be the only way to salvage recognition. The next morning, I compiled a regional analysis proving the ROI of our planned technical changes, annotated with the commit logs and the exact lines from the audit that had anticipated the client's question. I requested a quick one-on-one with David. He agreed. I walked into his office with a printed folder and a calmness that surprised even me. I laid everything out in chronological order and said, "I want to show you where these ideas came from, and what they'll deliver." He listened, he flipped through the pages. I could see his face shift, the relaxed manager's expression turning to the manager processing oversight. He looked at the dates, then at my email headers. He asked, "Why didn't you say something in the client meeting?" There was surprise in his voice that softened into apology. "I should have asked you to co-present," he said. "I didn't realize how much of this was your work." The apology mattered, but it didn't erase the meetings that had already been filed under someone else's name. I asked for a simple adjustment, credit for the elements I had authored in the client kickoff and a shared authorship note in the account plan. He agreed. I emailed the client a short, professional note thanking them for the opportunity and clarifying the technical next steps, CCING David, so it would be on record. The client replied with thanks, and that night I slept in the knowledge that the paper trail had begun to reclaim its weight. After that, things shifted, but slowly. I was invited into deeper strategy sessions. I was asked to run the technical sprints. Emily continued being visible in the social parts of the job, lunches, photos, and curated LinkedIn posts, but the tactical wins started to follow me. A few colleagues, emboldened by a quiet respect for documentation, started forwarding me messages asking how I engineered certain uplifts. It felt like a soft coalition of people who valued rigor. But revenge isn't a single moment, it's a slow, precise unraveling of a false narrative, and it takes discipline. There were days when I questioned whether I was being petty for caring so much about authorship and recognition. But it wasn't vanity. In our industry, credit shapes advancement, not just ego. When someone is promoted for body of work they didn't produce, it alters the path of two people, the thief and the cheated. It meant raises, client exposure, and career momentum stolen. I'd worked evenings and weekends, I'd optimized pages at midnight while the rest of the office slept. I had earned a rightful claim to those wins. By the end of the quarter, the campaigns I had directed for those two clients were outperforming several internal benchmarks. I walked into the next all-hands with the same calm I always tried to wear. When HR called for nominations for performance recognition, I submitted the documented timeline as an attachment to my nomination. I didn't call Emily out in the email, I didn't need to. The evidence was attached, and I let it do the talking. Recognition from the company eventually came in the form of a promotion and a title change, from senior analyst to technical SEO lead. David offered the promotion quietly, apologetically, and with a note that recognition had been slow but deserved. He made a point of saying that the agency had to do better at crediting work and that my documentation had been the catalyst for that cultural recalibration. I accepted, but my acceptance was not a celebration of victory so much as a quiet affirmation that precision and perseverance pay off. The hardest part, in a way, was watching Emily process the changing tide. She still had supporters among people who valued presentation and charm, but her ability to claim unearned triumph had become constrained. When clients asked for technical leads or detailed timelines, they asked for me. When junior staff sought mentorship, they came to me. I mentored with a deliberate kindness, a mixture of practical training and a warning about the importance of keeping meticulous records. The office learned to ask who had authored which deliverable before attributing the outcomes. I had not sought to humiliate, I had sought fairness. That first part of the battle, proving authorship, reclaiming credit, establishing a measurable reputation, was the most intimate and satisfying form of revenge I have known. It was slow, methodical, and professional. It preserved my integrity and elevated the standard for everyone who followed. I had not yelled, publicly shamed, or burned bridges. I had documented and delivered, and in the end, the numbers and the dates did the work I could not. After I was promoted to technical SEO lead, the dynamics of the office changed in ways both expected and surprising. New responsibilities meant new meetings, more client-facing time, and the delicate job of steering strategy while protecting the team from the kind of small politics that had once consumed my time. I aimed to set a tone, clear authorship, thorough documentation, and shared credit where due. I also wanted to dismantle the culture that had allowed someone like Emily to exploit charm for career capital. The first initiative I championed was a simple but powerful policy: every significant deliverable must have an authorship line and a version history entry before it's presented externally. It seemed basic, yet it was revolutionary for a workplace used to rapid iterations and the occasional fog of team wins. I framed it as quality control, something that ensured responsibility, traceability, and improved client communication. During the rollout, some grumbled about extra steps. Others saw it as a relief. Managers who had once conflated presence with productivity now had a paper trail for evaluation. Emily adjusted superficially, adding author lines beneath her slides and dating the version history. Yet habit and impulse are hard to shake. She still sought spotlight moments. I let her. Spotlight is not inherently wrong. What I corrected was the false narrative that used spotlight to obscure substance. We restructured client presentations so that technical leads and campaign owners co-presented by default. That eliminated the single-story hero moment and replaced it with a rhythm where facts were paired with explanation. There were times when I had to exercise restraint. Revenge can harden the heart into a relentless desire to punish, but I wanted something different: restoration. Some days I remembered the taped timeline on my wall and felt a pang of the anger that had once driven me. That anger faded into a dedication to mentoring junior staff precisely because I didn't want anyone else to wake up at midnight and feel unseen in the morning. As months rolled on, my work became more visible in productive ways. One of the big wins came when our team finally reclaimed a national client from a competitor. We ran a carefully measured campaign: technical cleanup, targeted content hubs, local schema for thousands of locations, and a backlink strategy tied to PR that leveraged seasonal events. The campaign took 6 months from audit to measurable national ranking improvements, and the corresponding lift in organic sales qualified us for a premium service contract. The credit was distributed: developers for implementation, account managers for communication, and the content team for delivery. I made sure each contributor's name was in the final case study. It was a lesson in shared recognition, and it felt honest. Emily still worked hard, she just had fewer avenues to claim other people's work as her own. I watched her find a role that suited more her strengths: managing relationships, smoothing client politics, and doing public-facing storytelling. Those were useful skills. I felt no glee in watching her redirect her career into work that matched her talents. If anything, I felt relief, for both of us, that the system had adjusted to place people where they could add the most value. I continued to teach others how to document effectively. I held brief workshops on using Google Drive version history, how to export Search Console snapshots, and how to annotate action items with timestamps on shared Trello cards. The junior analysts devoured the lessons. They asked questions about how to present authorship without seeming territorial. I encouraged them to frame ownership as professional clarity: this is the part one own, this is who to contact for changes. It lessened confusion in client situations and built a culture of accountability. One afternoon, Emily stopped by my desk with a box of donuts and a hesitant smile. She said she wanted to talk, not to apologize, she said, but to say she respected the way I handled things. She admitted she'd been ambitious in the wrong ways and that our office's new standards had helped her refocus. It wasn't exactly penitence, but it was honest. We spoke about career paths and gave each other practical advice. I told her what I told the juniors: document, be explicit about authorship, and match your delivery to your skills. She nodded. We both knew the office had changed, and that change had room for many different kinds of contribution. The biggest personal vindication came when an external industry award recognized the National Retail Campaign. The case study listed every contributor, with clear sections on who did the technical audit, the content architecture, and the link building. My name led the technical section. The award press release circulated through LinkedIn, and people I'd never met messaged me with congratulations. It felt implausible, given how the cycle had once spun against me, but the truth had finally reached outside the company walls. There was a smaller, quieter moment that mattered more than any plaque. One morning a junior analyst, who had started just weeks before I was promoted, knocked softly on my office door. She had been wrestling with a presentation and asked for feedback. We spent an hour refining her slides, practicing Q&A, and ensuring every claim had a supporting screenshot or timestamp. When she emailed afterward to thank me, she wrote, "I never knew how much authorship mattered." I wrote back, "Documenting doesn't close doors, it opens them." That message carried the moral I wanted to leave behind. I won't pretend there weren't awkward moments. Sometimes, Emily would still appear on a client call and try to weave herself into a story because she enjoyed the theater of it. I'd gently steer the conversation to the owners of work and let facts follow. Occasionally, an old pattern would re-emerge. She'd draft a social post that echoed language she'd heard in a planning meeting I'd led. I'd comment publicly with attribution, "Great summary, credit to the planning doc from March 12 by our content team lead." Nobody challenged such a correction because the evidence lived right in the shared drive. Looking back now, the revenge I sought was never about humiliation or theatrical confrontation. It was about structural fairness. I wanted an environment where a junior analyst could do the work and be seen for it without worrying a charismatic colleague would rewrite the narrative. The way I achieved that was boring and exacting, time-stamped docs, consistent follow-ups, and the daily discipline of letting data accumulate. I know that sounds small next to dramatic scenes people imagine when they think of revenge, but in an office the stakes are quietly huge: promotions, career arcs, and trust. There was one final scene that felt like the bookend to the whole saga. We hosted a town hall where leadership discussed the year's wins and the roadmap for the next. David stood on stage and spoke about the agency's evolving culture, noting a renewed emphasis on traceability and responsible authorship. He recognized people by name: the developers who had rebuilt the platform, the content editors who had carried difficult weeks, and the analytics team that had pulled together the winning case study. He looked at me as he mentioned the technical leadership and said, "This is the kind of detail-oriented leadership we need more of." The applause was warm, but the part that mattered most wasn't the clap. It was that the system, the culture, had shifted enough that the truth of work felt integrated into the company's vocabulary. If I'm honest, there's a part of me that still checks the drive's version history when a new presentation hits my inbox. Old habits are stubborn. But those checks are no longer about fear, they're about quality assurance. When I see a clean author line and a clear version history, I relax. I know the document will be accurate in future meetings and that credit will follow the actual labor. It is a quiet victory, but it is real. Revenge, as I practiced it, taught me discipline more than triumph. It taught me to value clarity, to invest in systems, and to protect my work with calm strategy rather than flash confrontation. I gained respect, yes, and maybe a promotion, but more importantly, I helped create a workplace where authorship matters and where the quiet labor that powers big results is visible. That is the legacy I chose, not a burned set of bridges but a path forward that others could follow without fearing their work would be rewritten under someone else's name. I write this now not to brag, but to offer a blueprint: document rigorously, present calmly, and always let evidence lead. If you're in an office where narratives get stolen and charm beats competence, start with a timeline. The rest will follow, not with fireworks, but with slow, undeniable truth. I found my work again by proving it was mine, and in doing so, I changed the rules of the game. That, to me, is the sweetest kind of revenge.